Well, I was very thankful that my wife prayed for Josh. Did you also pray for me? She did pray for me on the way to church, so that worked out okay. I do hope all of us will take advantage of a wonderful opportunity that we are going to have next week, and not the following week, but the week after that, Memorial Day weekend. Josh McDowell, who Labor Day weekend, Labor Day weekend, is truly a world-renowned speaker and author, and also happens to be one of our next-door neighbors. And now and again, he calls or emails and says, "I'm available, would you like me?" And we always say, "Yeah, sounds good to us." So he will be here next Sunday and Labor Day Sunday. And it's something that you should all look forward to. He is probably one of the most important youth evangelists of this past generation. He's had more effect on many lives. In fact, Lauren's son was in fact helped by him greatly one of the times in his son's life when he was having some real questions about his faith. I first ran into Josh, not in person, but in his books. He's written over 100 of me. When I was in graduate school, and I was stumbling around trying to figure out something, and went to a Christian bookstore, and somehow his book was right there. And it really did help. I got an A on the paper. During the past months, really, we've been going through Luke, and then we kind of hung on one of Jesus' most notable lessons in Luke 6. Now, Jesus' lesson had, and still has, all the elements that now educational researchers tell us are part of effective instruction. First, the teacher has to wake his students up. Then he's got to focus them on the lesson content. And then, once they're focused, he has to give them a reason to stay tuned. Because kids have a way of tuning you out real quick. And so do elderly people on Sunday. Well, Jesus wakes, focuses, and motivates his students with a very shocking series of blessings and curses that go completely against everything that the world teaches and believes about what makes people happy. And after this explosive intro, Jesus then tells his students things like, love your enemy. Somebody hit you on one cheek, give them the other. Somebody wants your cloak, give them your shirt too. Give. Don't judge. These are bombshells. These are things that just go against the grain of our human nature. And then he goes on to say, and you got to check if you have any blinding specks of pride in your eye. At the conclusion of an effective lesson, the teacher gives practice or a homework. Jesus is no exception in this particular situation, but Jesus knows that these giant steps for giving our enemies and giving our shirt after somebody's already taken our coat and turning the other cheek, these are giant steps. So, he gives us a challenging homework, but a much smaller baby step. Be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful. Now, the final step in lesson design is evaluation. How does Jesus judge our performance? Wait a minute, you say. I thought Jesus wasn't going to judge us. I thought he wouldn't judge us. Well, does he? John 5:22. Jesus is speaking. Moreover, the Father judges no one, but entrusts all judgment to the Son. Now, it doesn't say Jesus judges us, but it certainly does say that he is entitled to judge us and qualified to judge us. John 8:15. Kind of give us a little bit of a break here. It sounds like at first anyway. Jesus is again speaking. You, Jews and Pharisees, judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one. Now, there's a very complicated grammatical Greek thing going on here that has to do with the emphatic tone of the you and the I and whatever else. But really, what this particular statement on Jesus' part is saying is this. You judge by human standards. I do not. In other words, he's been given by his Father and trusted all judgment. He doesn't judge by human standards. But finally, we come to John 12:47. Again, Jesus speaking. As for the person who hears my words and does not keep them, I do not judge him. For I did not come to judge the world, but to save it. Now here, the word judge in Greek is something a little more than we think of when we just think in terms of somebody, having some opinion about somebody. No, it has more to do with the last judgment. So this particular scripture might be better read if we read it this way, as it is recorded in the International Standard Version. I didn't come to condemn the world, but to save it. Okay. So, what is Jesus' grading policy? We find it in Luke 6:43 through 45. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. 45. I want you to focus now. A good man brings good things out of the good things stored up in his heart. And an evil man brings evil things out of the evil things stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks that which the heart is full of. Now, Jesus' grading method on first glance looks an awful lot like what we call in the ed business pass-fail. You're either good or you're bad. You pass or you fail. But we need to take a little bit of time to kind of understand these words that have been used here. In verse 43, the NIV translates the word supros as bad. Okay. But the King James Version, don't get too puffed up here, Nancy, translates it as corrupt. And I think in this context, that's more correct. Something can be bad because it was a poor design. It was just designed bad. It was bad from the get-go. It was never any good. And then there are things that were good that because of things in nature and sun rays and whatever else turn bad. And that's what we're talking about. Now, that's the exact question that they're asking now at the Schlittelbahn water park, which last Sunday, a 10-year-old boy, descending from the 14-story water slide, the world's tallest, at 65 miles an hour, was decapitated. When he was thrown from the raft harness and into the safety net and then plunged 50 feet to the ground. Now the question is, was this world's tallest water slide unusual by design, or over the course of the last 8 years, had something broken or something worn down or whatever that somehow made this terrible thing happen? Did it become corrupted? Frankly, I think it was a lousy design to start with. They showed some of the initial slides down this thing where they put sandbags in the sled. They slid it down and would slide down and then go up this thing and just fly off into the air. Why they kept doing it, I don't know. But the question is it a bad design? Or was it good initially and then become corrupted? That's what Jesus is basically referring to here when he's referring to trees. But now in verse 45, Jesus is going to evaluate men. Now he uses this exact same word for good. A good man is good. There's good stored up in his heart. But when a man is evil, that's the word, it's a different word than bad. There's evil stored up in his heart. Now trees have no choice. When they're planted in poor soil, when droughts come, followed by the bark beetles and fire and everything else, it's all happening to them. They may have been good, but because of natural things going on in their life, they have turned bad. And that happens to us also. We'll look at that a little further in a bit. Men are also influenced by outside things that cause them to stumble and do all kinds of crazy things. But man has one other thing that the trees don't, and that's a heart. Now in the Bible, when it refers to a heart, it's not really talking about this muscle in your chest. It's talking about something in your spirit, in your mind. I don't know how it all works mechanically, but somehow in there you have choices. You literally can choose to do something that's unhealthy with you or for you. All of us who have smoked or are smoking understand that. We can choose to or not to. It's our choice. And because we have choice, because we have free will, because we have this heart, we are not just corrupt. We are evil. We can literally choose to hurt ourselves and abuse other people. Which puts us in an entirely different category. Now Jesus judges not the external things, but he judges the desires of, the direction of your will. And each of us, it says in Genesis, was perfectly designed in the beginning. But then, things went wrong. We were perfectly designed and are perfectly designed in God's eyes for some specific calling in his kingdom. We have the right stuff to complete this particular job that's going to glorify God and bless our brothers and sisters. In high school, I tried out for the swim team. On my way home from tryouts, I cramped up and vomited. I'm told now that it's because of the lactic acid buildup in my body or something like that. Needless to say, I didn't make the team. I once overheard my mother say, "Tom swims like a rock." I took it as a compliment at the time, but later I figured out, no, that's not a compliment. Michael Phelps last night won 28 Olympic gold medals. Most of, not gold, there are 28 medals, I think 22 were gold or something. But it's the most medals anybody's ever won in any Olympic event ever since the beginning of the time they keep records. Now, I am not going to tell you that he doesn't have a lot of discipline and that he is a determined and a hard-working person. He swims 42 miles a week in his different practices. But I could swim 82 miles a week, and I still wouldn't make the high school swim team. Phelps' height is 6'4", 6 feet 4 inches tall. Do we have a picture of him up here? Juanito has something for us. There he is. He's 6'4" tall. Now, in normal people, the length between this hand and that hand is exactly the same as the length between your feet and your head. But in Phelps, he has a reach of 6'7", which gives him an uncanny advantage in terms of his pulling ability over somebody who would train with an equal regimen. His torso is that of a person that is 6'8". In other words, this part of his body would normally belong to somebody who's 6'8", but he's 6'4", which means his feet or his legs are those that would normally belong to a person who is 5'10". The fact that his torso is longer gives him more buoyancy and holds him up in the water. The fact that his legs are shorter gives him less drag in the water and helps him to move along faster. His palms are enormous. Equivalent in the world of the ocean would be the flippers on a seal. And he has size 14 feet. And freakishly flexible ankles, which make him move much like a shark fin. Now, finally, his body, and they've proven this scientifically, only develops half of the lactic acid after a hard workout as a normal person. I think I develop twice as much as a normal person. Now, one argument against Christianity is many non-Christians appear to be more Christ-like, more empathetic, more compassionate than we do. And honestly, that's a fair argument. It's true. I won't point out any examples or make any of myself. Now, Phelps deserves all his medals, but he was born with given advantages. Phelps is naturally fishy. I don't mean to take anything away from his amazing accomplishments, because they are amazing. But God isn't interested in our gold medals. He's interested in our heart. Now, a swimmer from the refugee Olympic team, apparently there's a group of refugees from Syria and other places that have gotten together and created their own little Olympic team, and they're there. He came in last. But in the kingdom of heaven, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. That says Matthew 20:16. So the man, the refugee guy, he may in the kingdom of God at this very moment receiving gold medals. I don't know what Phelps is receiving. I hope he's getting gold medals too. Now, what we need to understand here is that we really, with our eyes and our ears and our smelling abilities, aren't in a position to judge anybody but one. We'll get to that later. Good people in Luke, Matthew, and Mark, the story is in all three of these Gospels, see Jesus hanging out with a bunch of losers. And they immediately assume that he's a loser. He eats with tax collectors and sinners, they say. Well, my mother, who was very worldly wise, would have agreed, because she would always say, birds of a feather flock together. But when Jesus discerned their thoughts, he said this: it is not the healthy that need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners. Here we go with our homework once again. Now, in a course of study, at the conclusion of it, it's time to take a final exam. And let's imagine that this has been a course of study, and we've been studying the 6th chapter of Luke, and we've gone through this thing, and now we're ready for our final exam. And here's the question. It's rather a long question, so you've got to stay focused. Okay? Stay with me. A brutally handsome, college-educated married man who earns $250,000 a year in a job that he likes and is good at, has a beautiful wife who teaches Pilates part-time when she's not tutoring their 2 exceptional children to win the national spelling bee and driving them to ballet, soccer, and band practice. Now, after 10 years of marriage, this brutally handsome, talented character is getting a little bored with everything going around him in life, and he sees his very attractive, married secretary. And after all, she seems to be awfully friendly to me. She's probably wants it. She's probably coming on to it. Truth is, she just wants to keep a job. But he fantasizes about taking this woman to bed, all this stuff, and he's there, but he never does anything to actualize his imaginations. And he's so proud of the fact that he's remained chaste and true to his wife that he thinks he probably should go to his pastor and offer to teach a course on marriage. Now, there is an active member of the LGBT community. Doesn't matter whether it's a he or a she, and it doesn't matter if it's a LGB or T. You fill in the blanks. Whatever you want to do, you stick the blanks in there. Well, this LGB or T partner contracts AIDS. And the drugs that this partner needs to somehow fight against this disease cost $15,000 a month. So, the he or the she of the LBG, whatever it is, prostitutes themselves to earn the money. Meantime, the partner gets sicker, and sicker, but the LGB or T, whichever, cares for him or her, whichever, until death do them part. Now, which does Jesus pass, and which does Jesus fail? Well, I don't know how you would answer this question, but I think it's a trick question. I think they are both going to hell in a handbasket, personally. That's my personal view on this thing. But it didn't ask for my view. It didn't ask for the human view. It asked for Jesus' view. Here's a hint. Matthew 5:27. You've heard it said, Jesus speaking by the way, you've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery. Where has he committed adultery? In his heart. Mine will do. That's okay, Mary. That's great. I'll go with mine. I'm not quite sure how all that works. But in his interior, he's the only one that knows what he's done. He looks great. Everybody at church thinks he should be teaching a marriage seminar. Well, you say, and I don't blame you for saying, because that's what I would say. It's okay. Okay, good. This handsome yuppie, he fails. But doesn't the LGBT person fail worse? Well, let's see what Jesus had to say about such a person. Luke 7:36 through 50. We'll start at 37. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house and came there with an alabaster jar of perfume worth several years' wages, lots of money. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. She wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee, that good person who should be teaching the marriage ceremony at church, or marriage seminar at church, saw it, he said, "Oh my gosh! If this man were really a prophet, he would know who is touching him. Ooh, filthy little fingers. What kind of woman she is. That she is a sinner." Now Jesus knows exactly who's touching him. He's got the same eyes, the same ears, the same nose as the good Pharisee. He can see everything that the good Pharisee can see, but he also sees all the forces in the world that have worked against this woman, all the abuses that she suffered from her father, all the fact that she was homeless after her husband died and left her with nothing. He sees the lusty men going after her with fistful of dollars. And he also sees the broken jar of perfume, which is her only hope of any material security. It's her life savings, which she has poured onto his feet. Jesus sees and knows the whole story. Jesus knows the troubles that we experience as men and women, because he was in heaven, the Son of God. And as the Son of God, there were two things that he could not do. He could not suffer and he could not die. So what did he do so that he could fully relate to us, so that he could fully understand us? He became one of us. And as one of us, he suffered more than any of us could ever imagine. And he died. He became one of us. Why? So when he was resurrected, we could become like him. We could be resurrected with him. We could overcome all this stuff in our lives. Now Jesus tells this good Pharisee a parable about two debtors. One owes very little, one owes a whole bunch. And the guy forgives both of them. And he says, well, who's going to love the guy that forgives them the most? Well, the obvious answer that the Pharisee had to come up with was, of course, the one that was forgiven most. And then he turns to the Pharisee and says, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she has loved much. He sees her heart. Then looking at the woman, Jesus says, to the sinful woman, the Bible doesn't pull any punches here. Jesus said, to the sinful woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Okay. Now go ahead and mark your answer. And as you're marking your answer as to which passed and which failed, I want you to thank God Jesus, not you, is the one that's going to score your final exam. Thank God that the one that knows all the troubles you see, come on, singers, that knows all the troubles you see, that has experienced the depths of despair beyond anything any of us can even slightly understand, sweating blood. Jesus knows all the troubles you see. As the musicians sing this song, I want you, the person sitting in your seat, the only other person in this room besides God who actually knows what's in your heart, to take a look. Take a look. See what's in there. And then try to understand or imagine, how does that compare to the perfection that Christ requires in the kingdom of God? Imagine the sacrifices that Christ made so that you could be forgiven for all of that stuff. And then you'll be able to go and do your homework. Go learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners.